How are you doing, Bella, anyway?
I'm so happy to be here. This is just the very, very beginning. Today is the very beginning of the webinar series. And it's very, very, very much the beginning of this whole journey and transmission and amazing. Yeah. So excited.
It's so good to have you here and to be doing this as well. It's like you said, it's just so good, the beginning of all of this. And yeah, it's gonna be a pretty wild ride for sure. I have to say, the stuff that's to be shared, especially in these three calls, but the stuff to be shared. And it's just, yeah, it's just absolutely mind blowing. It's definitely been a highlight of my last 3 months of intensive craziness. I just want to say, like, how awesome is this to start with? That it's been a long time since the book's been released. And for me, it was such a interesting path because I thought, to be honest, I was hoping for a break. When the book came out, and thank you to everybody that supported this work from the very beginning as well, all the way back in sort of January with the pre-orders and then the book actually being released in the summer. And yeah, it's just really grown so great. And I was so hoping to do some webinars about the Lost Octave. And then what was really interesting was that Lionsgate happened again. So it took 9 months for the book to from sort of the initial conception to actually a physical product. And then it came out and I was like, great. And I had 1 week in the summer solstice where I literally sort of took that 1 week off and I went to Avalon in Glastonbury. And the weirdest thing happened to me there, and maybe some people can sort of connect with this, but I didn't realize how so much input I put into that book and its production. Literally, as soon as I got to Avalon within that bubble, like sacred, I got there and I basically collapsed, like physically, actually collapsed on the floor, which was weird. It was like just my whole body just shattered in a way. And so the rest of the week, I was actually trying to recalibrate my sleep patterns because as writing about the stars, my whole circadian rhythm changed. I was up till 3 a.m. every single night because that's when the energies and the transmission was coming through. And yeah, it was really interesting. So I was hoping for this break and I had this 1 week and it was amazing in the summer solstice. And then Lionsgate happened again. And I had no intentions. I didn't know where the next thing was going to happen. And then just this floodgate opened and of course, this year it's the 888 portal. So we're in the year of the dragon. And of course, the whole book about the octave and eight. And so, yeah, it was just so crazy, really. So crazy that this new window opened. And so it kind of pulled me into what now became this second part two. And it was just like from one thing straight into the next. And so that's really why it's been so long. That is so great to actually finally be here and be sharing this because I would say that this has definitely been the fastest thing that's ever happened because it's only been since Lionsgate to now to be an online platform, the whole course, all of the Star Codons and everything. So that's really where we've ended up. And it's so great that it's kind of like such a beautiful thing that in Gate 71, or Hexagram 1 is where the Star Codons is being birthed. And I think for those of you that know the sort of Gate 1 or 71, it's that initial birth of the whole of creation. And it's really interesting because that ties in so much to what this is now about the Star Codons. So I just wanted to share that with everybody because it's been such a crazy journey for me from the birth of the Lost Octave and then straight into a whole new realm where this course is such a huge thing. So I just wanted to say to everybody that's got the book and such beautiful comments and reviews and sharings, and it's so great to see a community coming around it and gathering around it. And so yeah, I just wanted to share about that before we get going into the next octave of things. So yeah, essentially, welcome to this, and I'm so looking forward to the fact that this is the beginning, really, of more of this coming out and more of these webinars, more sharings, and able to create this sort of community and place where people can start to gather around this work and share their own journeys with this. And so I wanted to introduce Bella. I mean, a lot of Bella and her beautiful work with human design and gene keys. And I mean, how many years has it been now, Bella? 10 years, 15 years? for you?
Yeah, I think I started sharing like 10 years ago on Facebook, but that was just out of my own inspiration. Again, that thing about being a fourth line and feeling that we really love when there's somebody on the other side that can receive what we're doing. So it came from that inner inspiration and awe of the mechanics and the geometries that I was discovering, and then wanting to share that. So starting just in Facebook groups and creating more of a dialogue or a community around this. And also because I think my take was always that human design and gene keys go together, which I feel like there's a transmission that started to come in that is kind of the modern take on the I Ching, which was 1987 with Ra Hu. And I think that the work that you're doing now is just showing us that this is a living transmission and that we are revealing and remembering more. And to be in that transmission, I feel like it's never stopped. And there has been a little bit of that kind of, okay, what's the next thing? And also my own way of interpreting it. So that's also when you started to share with me how I was resonating so much. And this is, we could say, the third transmission in basically a year and a little bit more, because you started with the soul colors that most here don't know what it is. And then it was the portal with the Lionsgate last year. That was the last octave. And then there was a new transmission, the Star Codons, this year. So it hasn't stopped from the very beginning. And it's quite funny because all the times I think I was in Sweden when you were having something new coming through, well, that was maybe not so much about me, but it's how I started. And then Unlock Your Design, which is where we are bridging the gap between human design and gene keys, but also where we have been speaking about walking the wheel and also using an astrological language. And that is for those of you that have the book, the Deacons, right? You have the astrological geometry. And if I was only into human design and gene keys, it would have been a little bit harder to understand the wheel, because even if we have the Ray Mandala or even if we have the pulse in the gene keys, it's not necessarily that understanding of how it is the zodiac wheel that goes together with the gates and the hexagrams.
It's so great. And yeah, that's why it was so great to connect with Bella way before I even brought out the Lost Octave, as Bella said. And I felt it's really important to, and kind of really beautiful, really. And it goes so well with the Star Codons, which we'll get into, that there is a male and a female guiding this journey. And of course, well, actually, I probably couldn't have done this on my own, to be honest, because Bella's been invaluable with her wealth of experience in this realm. But it's like it's so great to connect with somebody else, and we can speak that one common language where we can take it back to the bare bones of the hexagrams. And then with your wealth of knowledge, with what you've done with human design and gene keys, and then with this new transmission, it's been really great to share like kind of these different angles. And so it's great for me to share the brand new insights to somebody who's been doing this for over 10 years. And it's great to have that feedback. But I think this is a really special thing for this work, the Star Codons, because it's funny because I called the Star Codons that they were the genetic answers to our universe. And it was beautiful because the Lost Octave was our story in the stars. And then the Star Codons came along and it was like, well, these are the genetic answers of the entire universe. Because really, when we go down to the building blocks of all life, all creation, everything that we can perceive in this realm and into the other dimensions, they're all linked to the DNA. And that's obviously linked to the astrology through Ra's amazing work that he did as that foundation. And so, when I'm speaking to people about human design, I sort of say that I feel like often that if Ra was alive now, he probably would be doing essentially what I'm bringing forward, because it's like a sort of that evolution, because of what it was in the 90s, right? That he sort of finished his transmissions. So that's quite a big gap, 20 years worth of where it's just been brewing in the collective. And of course, when I got into this, it was like I really loved the ancient astrology and obviously the star stories, but then now linking that into more the intricacies of biology, the DNA code. And I love the I Ching hexagrams. And I mean, the stuff that I've found in there is just insane. I have to say to people, this Star Codons, it is the best thing that I've been honored to do. Like, I have to say, like, there is nothing in my life that I've done, and I've done a lot of really amazing projects in sports and coaching and things like that. But there's something about the Star Codons, I think, because it is the genetic answers to the universe, that it's like every question that you have, everything that you want to know, it's all there. And it's so beautifully woven. Everything is absolutely perfect. And I said this to the Lost Octave as well, that when I was doing numbers and figuring out the geometries as a line one, so I'm a 4-1 in my human design. So line one is like understanding the systems, right? So it's interesting because line sixes are sort of like being able to see the whole system. But line ones are also kind of that, but line ones love to get into the nitty gritty. And I was never into the DNA. I was never into astrology. These were all things that came, but I really fell in love. And to be honest with you, if I didn't do this, I probably would want to be a geneticist because it's captured my heart so much. And but the thing is, I think that's missing with science is meaning. Because yeah, okay, that hexagram is that amino acid, and we'll get into all this conversation, but it's like when you can see that that is linked to a star, that star is connected and ruled by this planet, and that's in your natal chart. And then you've got this macrocosm of the cosmos now pulled into the microcosm of your actual physical body. And you start to realize that we're made of stardust and everything's connected. And that's really why I would say that the star codons are the greatest thing that I've been privileged to bring forward. And that's why it's been such a fast transmission, and that's why I wanted to share with everybody this and say, like, this is a grand experiment. All right. This has not been done before in this way. And some of the connections are completely brand new, and especially elevating it into multi-dimensional cells. It's very, very Aquarian. So again, it's this very futuristic, forward thinking process, but it's so relatable. And I think that's because of the whole Lost Octave was about 72, gate 72, the Taurus. And what I found was in my sidereal north node, that's gate 72 for me. So it really makes sense that the whole essence is to take the entire cosmos and to pull it into the understanding of our physical everyday life. And that's really the path of Tantra. So that's the beauty of being able to, Tantra means to weave, right? It means a technology or a weaving technology. And well, what's the weaving technology in our body but the DNA? And so this is why I say that as you start to move in all these different fields of maths and science and meaning and star stories, it comes back to this one thing, that our genetic code is this is the map. And the stars are sort of the projection of that DNA code. And one thing I'll share before we fully get into this is even the star constellations, they actually mirror the amino acids. And this is wild. Right? And so one of them is the serotonin molecule or tryptophan molecule. And it actually mirrors the star constellation of Orion. And so when I was looking through this, I'm looking at the genetic code and I'm seeing star constellations. Now that is something that cannot be made up. That's something that is just so beautiful, such a harmony that it doesn't matter whether we look on the micro level under a microscope or whether we look up at the stars, it's saying the same story. And so the star codons are there to reveal what all of that means, to start to bring it into sort of tangible, embodied, everyday understandings with that sort of beautiful artistic and poetic license to sort of fall in love with DNA, fall in love with the stars and see that they are actually just beautiful mirrors of each other. I don't know if you want to say anything about that, Bella, but
For me, why I feel that the star codons are so powerful is that they're so essential. So for those of you that bought the book, you know that it's not something that you read in a whim. It's something to savor. It's something to allow it to come into you. And you could read it so many times. I have read it several times already, and I often leave Robert a message saying, I discovered this. I was spending some time with Cancer. I was spending some time with this gate. And what I feel with the Star Codons is that they are so essential. There is so much story, but the story is more be in between the lines. So you get something quite simple and very clean. I feel that most of these transmissions that comes through a human being, whether that is you or who or the people that wrote the Bible, right? It always has a voice of the author, which is beautiful. And at the same time, for me, what I felt with the Star Codons, why they started to go so deep so fast and just working my DNA and working my body and pulling on all these things was that they seemed so essential and like they didn't have a voice of something foreign. So there was nothing in my system that said, oh, something is imposing something on me, where I have to filter this voice of cynicism, of poetry, of accent, of some kind of all the different things that can make us sometimes be a little bit resistant to a transmission wasn't there. For me too, of course, you have created a ground with the Lost Octave. And for those of us that are in the I Ching or in human design or in astrology, we also have a foundation. So when we are starting to learn about the star codons and these combinations of gates that we didn't even know had to do with each other, it's something that takes everything that we already know and just puts it in a new perspective. And then it starts a whole new thing. So for me, this is really the next octave of whatever has been done so far in the transmission that's probably started with the I Ching, but even before, because you're just remembering by being here and tuning in. That feels like my way in, and also why I felt such a big yes to just continuing and allowing it to come in and come in. Sometimes we don't need all the beautiful words and the poetry, which although through the mythology and the stories, that's beautiful, the storytelling has its place. But today you're going to get a little glimpse of it. And for the rest of the week as well, where this is not about the words, this has something more essential to it that I hope that we are all going to be able to feel even if we don't have that much time together. I hope that's going to come through.
Beautiful. It's so great as well. And it, for those that are maybe brand new to this as well, like even some of the words that we're speaking may seem like super advanced, or I have no idea any of this, and it will all come very, very clear. And it's so beautiful how simple actually these things are, because the I Ching in itself is like a rite of passage, right? To even sort of take that on to start looking at hexagrams. That was sort of like initiation, right? Philosophers would, take something like that to write their own sort of commentaries on. So taking on that, taking on the whole DNA code, taking on the whole of astrology might seem like, oh, how am I ever going to learn this? And I don't understand. But really, it's so simple. And I think, as I mentioned in the Lost Octave, that once you certain patterns and you are sort of given like the cheat codes, then everything starts to happen so beautifully. It's like almost like that you widen the view, and I actually understand this now. And that's why the Star Codons we'll get into a bit later is it's a longer process, because we are essentially, you're going to know the entire, we're going through the whole DNA code, we're going through the whole of the I Ching, we're going through the whole of astrology, and we're going into multi-dimensional aspects of this, which haven't been done before. So it's like, whoa, it seems like a huge thing. But what's so beautiful is that everything is this fractal universe. And like I said, music is that once you learn one octave, then you know all octaves. And it's very similar in the star codons, because it's almost like once you start to see how the star codons work together, how they move in groups and constellations, then these patterns just start to unfold super beautifully and so easily. I'll share on here. So this is it. And it's so beautiful, like to birth this in gate 1 or to gate 71. I can't tell you how auspicious that is, because that's the creative, right? In the I Ching, that's the prime yang, it's the pure yang. It's literally the star of creation. And so the fact that this is being born in that section of time, it's this alignment of the cosmos and this transmission that's like saying, it's for now, it's ready, like get going. People need to move into this and experience this. And that's why I'm just so, it's such a beautiful thing when you see how everything aligns. And you'll see this geometry similar to this is the lost octave geometry. And I'll just mention about this because this was the key is that this is a fourth dimensional hypercube essentially, but it's also the Venus star. And as I mentioned in the lost octave, that was the key because it's about 8 points. The Venus star is an 8 pointed star. That's the octave. And so that links to the 8 trigrams, the 8 elements. And obviously, all the combinations of that create the 64 hexagrams. And then, of course, the lost octave of the lost 8 gates to make it into that divine 72 number. So you'll see here in the background, and this is going to be really important throughout this whole journey, like, who is this person in the background? And I'm spending time on this because it's really important because in that Lionsgate transmission was this most profound sort of vision, profound experience for me, which was that through the maternal DNA, so the mother line, your mother line DNA, it's known as the mitochondria. And what's so beautiful about the mitochondria is that it's a DNA within the DNA. Now, we're used to speaking about two-strand DNA. Actually, there's always been another two strands of DNA, and it's never spoken about, or very seldom, unless you're in the science realm. So all of a sudden, this knowledge of like, well, hold on, we have this two-strand, which they call nuclear DNA. Well, within that, we actually have another two strands. Well, that changes a lot about how we think about ourselves. And that starts to open up like what's been known as the non-coding or the junk DNA. So it's true that this sense of like, oh, this non-coding DNA, it's like 90% of what we have activated, and they don't know this 90% that's there. And so actually the maternal DNA is one of these keys that opens the door into this extra percentage of DNA. And the amazing thing about maternal DNA is that it's the same in you as it is in your mother, in your grandmother, in your great great grandmother. And you can track it's exactly the same code that runs through you, that runs through your ancestral line all the way back to first Eve. And this image that we're seeing, this is first Eve. This is my artistic depiction when I went into my vision, was this sort of like, sort of wild woman. And it was really interesting because this journey took me to a certain destination, which I share. And it's about this Star Codons is about tracing the mother line all the way back to the first mother of all creation or all humanity in this world. So that's her 8 billion children right now is on the planet. And so essentially the Star Codons and the DNA, everything, every single person is connected through their genetics. And that's why I say it's the answers to the universe, because the actual how mitochondrial Eve was formed from stardust. Yes, so it's this beautiful sense of we're actually going to go on this journey of tracing our origins through our own present moment bodies. 13 billion years is living inside you. And that is incredible to know that this DNA is the same DNA, that it hasn't changed in the maternal line, that it's just been passed on and through. For me, that was the auspicious start to the Star Codons. And I was like, wow, to bring this forward now, to do this ancestral work. And of course, we're in gate 71, and we've just had the Samhain, which is that sense of ancestry, going back to our ancestors and the ones that have passed, or the sense that they're ever present in our now and helping us and assisting us in this time of great change and the new humanity that's being born. To have this principle that first Eve, that we're actually going to track first Eve through our own body. And we're going to open all of those doors through all of those timelines. And to me, that was like, this is such a great transmission to start with and to explore. So the Lion's Gate, this is first Eve. And you can see that in the background here, when I connected with First Steve, it's like, well, where is there a place on the earth that First Eve appeared? Like how this sense of like the Garden of Eden in the Bible, it's like, well, where did that actually happen? Did it happen? And through science, which is so beautiful to link science and spirituality together. But yes, we can actually trace it. And this was my journey through the DNA to find out where First Eve would have been. And this is really where it blows the history books into smithereens. And there's a huge disparity because humanity's meant to be 6,000 years old, according to science, right? Well, how can that be possible when they can actually trace through the DNA back to first Eve at over 300,000 years ago? That is mind blowing. And of course, they speak about that mitochondrial Eve is like the first cells started to form together. And then, of course, they multiplied and they started to create the first evolutions of human beings. And what's really interesting is that we know that our chromosomes, for example, have been fused together and spliced from our 24 chromosomes into 23. And that was meant to have happened around 200,000 years ago. So this is when we can start to see, this is interesting that first Eve would have been at this time. And when I traced this, it took me all the way back to the motherlands of Africa. And I kind of felt that was so right. And this sense of that all of humanity was birthed out of Africa. And I think that's perhaps why, I don't know about you, Bella, but I went to South Africa when I was really young, but there seems to be that everybody seems to have this agreement that Africa holds something special. Perhaps if you've never even visited, but the music or the sense of the tribe or the sense of the beauty or the even today, the unknown sense of even the Congo, there's animals that we haven't even discovered there because it's so treacherous to go into some of these places in Africa. And it's full of diamonds, it's full of gold, it's full of tea and herbs and natural medicines. It's literally like the Amazon rainforest. It's one of those hubs of creation that seems to be birthing humanity from it and still does. And so part of our journey is to go back to First Eve, to Africa. And I've actually managed to find the exact location of where first humanity was born. And it's so auspicious because that leads me into the next part is that in my vision for this and with the geographical understandings, I actually now know where New Lemuria is actually going to take place, actually physically on the earth. This is not just sort of like a transcendental thought. This is how the DNA works, how it's all grouped. And so when I went on this journey, it took me to this mother tree. And the cosmic tree is one of those emblems that's been the tree of life, the tree of light, the sense that it bridges the earth and the heavens. And it's this sense of roots, right? Which is that twisting vine. And that's the DNA. And so it's like from the heavens and the earth, we're all connected through the trees, through that sort of almost mycelium network and the roots of earth. And this is all connected to where New Lemuria is, which we maybe we'll get into get into that. But it's amazing how Gaia this time is actually creating a new Lemuria. And the fact that this has been revealed in the Star Codons shows me that this is the step forward for that sixth root race and that we really are moving to a completely new frequency band because that third root race and then the sixth root race, well, the three and the six are harmonics even in the hexagrams. So it's a beautiful thing that so through music, through the hexagrams, through the DNA, all these things are connecting and saying the same story. And so this sense that New Lemuria is being birthed, and I think we can feel that in the collective, in our consciousness. But now to actually have geographical connections that we can trace our roots back and we can start to open these doors in our consciousness and actually start to receive these codes to activate our DNA. To me, it's just it's just been an absolute magical journey in the last 3 months to compile all of this through. So I don't know if you want to share anything on that, Bella, how you feel, but you're probably hearing some of this as well for the first time.
Why you should take it back to the gate and to the beginning and wearing the wheel. So for me, this is very connected to the part of the wheel where we have Gaia, where we have the 19, where we have the 60, also the 41, and feeling that it's not just a theory that's out there and that we can learn about, but this is actually happening now. And this is part of the evolution of the remembering where we come from and the evolution of where we're going. And also feeling that feminine energy that you are conveying through even speaking about the Taurus in the 72, but also here with First Eve. And a new beginning, it feels like, but that is respecting everything that ever was before.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really this journey is the sense that the first sort of part of the journey, I would say, it's like I call it the 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, because that's the pilgrimage that's why I say it's this great experimentation, this pilgrimage that we all make together. We're all moving through the wilderness of the DNA because it's so vast. And so these sort of teachings and transmissions and connections in the gates, it's laying out the path for us to follow. And I've obviously gone through all of this, but at the same time, like I'm also a voyager with everyone. It's not like, oh, I've done this and I'm just going to show you how it is. It's like we are literally moving through this in this present moment as a collective. And that's why this is really special, because we don't know, me and Bella don't know yet whether this would be a thing that will recur next year, whether this would be a one-time thing that we'll do, and whether it would be a course. We have no idea. But right now, what's more important is that this is an opportunity for all of us to move through this brand new material and this 40 days and 40 nights, to move through that sort of desert and the wilderness, to find what this is and explore what this is all about. And then there's this beautiful part of where we reach the promised land, right? So it is kind of this biblical, beautiful narrative in here, because once we reach the promised land, it's like we've done the ancestral work, we've tracked back to first Eve, and then we're sort of slung through the quantum realm, through multi-dimensional layers. And then all of a sudden now we're teleported into the future of the future human. And so it's this amazing journey of, giving homage to trace, to go through the patterns in us that need to be opened and healed, so that then we can actually move through the dimensions without any of the blocks, without the sense of, can just more into that sense of exploration and having the capacity even to comprehend the next dimensions. Because I'll tell you that I'll share some stuff about it, but in the next dimensions, the geometries get super funky. Like it's really intricate, but it's actually less complex, funnily enough. But it's such a harmony, but it really does multiply on an exponential level. And this is where we need to embrace and step into this sort of hyperdimensional human, because that is really where we're going. And so that's the journey, this 40 days and 40 nights. What I'll share about this roots of life in the DNA is in Ra's work, which is called the Godheads. Some of you may be familiar with this, some of you may not be, but by all means, go and check it out. It's really amazing. And how he laid out the hexagrams, especially in the what the human design called the Rave Mandala. When you look at the hexagrams, they're aligned in very particular ways and groupings, and it created this, what he called the 16 faces, or the Godhead. And maybe Bella can speak about this in a moment. And from this, it reveals this sense of that the DNA code is linked to this. And when I then looked at it through the maternal DNA lens, all of a sudden the second half of the picture came. So imagine, like, saying about the two strands of DNA. Well, that's kind of like what we've been concentrated on. That's what Ra connected it to. But when I did the maternal DNA, it's like the feminine version of what's been brought through. And so what's so beautiful about it is that they actually merge in such incredible geometries and harmonies. To me, it was like, wow, it really has been this discovery of just amazement. because some of the amino acids, some of the start codons, stop codons, actually all of the start codons, stop codons, they're very, very different. And so all of a sudden, let's say there's a stop codon in the godheads or in the normal DNA. Well, all of a sudden in the maternal DNA, it's a different kind of thing. It's either like a start codon or a different amino acid. So hold on a minute. So one side is like you say, the nuclear, although it's masculine and feminine, let's just call it a masculine line. That's doing one thing, but the maternal DNA is doing another thing. And they're in harmony together. They're winding, weaving together this tapestry. And so up until this point, it's like we've seen it from one angle, but now we get to see the feminine angle. And as I say, it shows a different story. It's almost like shows a different way in which you move around the wheel and how the groupings are connected and different amino acids in different places. And that's why I say this is the sort of, it's not even the next octave. It's like the continuation of what I would say what Ra's work is. It's like the sort of expansion into another aspect of it, right? And that's why I say that perhaps if he was still here, he probably would have explored these things. But that's why I say I feel very privileged to bring this forward, because now seeing how the maternal and the nuclear DNA are now creating this harmony between the yin and the yang views. It's like seeing life from the line one or seeing life from line 6 or 7. You're looking at the same thing, but in different ways. And it's very beautiful how it harmonically works together. And that's why there's so many things in this that when you explore it, you'll see that certain gates connect and you're like, wow, I never even knew that they were connected. Or I didn't realize that that was a moment in the DNA code actually was an initiation point where everything started rather than where everything stopped. And so these are things that have never been done before. This is information that hasn't been put out ever before. So that's why I say this is the grand voyage, this experiment of exploring this for the first time. And we're really at the precipice, the cutting edge of this. And with my work with the DNA and really going into the genetic code on a really comprehensive level, I've started to see and predict where things are going to occur. And just the other week, one of my predictions that's in the Star Codons actually came true. It was discovered in Science about a month ago. So it's really kind of crazy how it feels like this transmission it's like happening live. It's happening like live now. And so this opportunity to explore it, like as consciousness is literally unfolding, I think is super special. So yeah, I just wanted to know if you had anything to share about the Godhead work, Bella.
Yeah, the Godhead has a lot to do with the program because according to human design, we're all in a program. And the only way of basically not suffering in the program is that we decondition and we follow straight authority so that we can live as unique beings as ourselves. And then we are not slaves under the program. The invisible hands of the program are the Godheads. So it's going to speak specially about the Godhead that is where you have your sun gate and say that your whole life is conditioned by that. So it's a little bit cynical in that sense. And I had a comment last week on Facebook where somebody from human design said, oh, there's no way around it. I was saying, yes, it's a Godhead, but there might also be another way of looking at it than that you're a slave under it. And basically this person was saying, there's no other way, no choice. And I think that what I feel with this work is that we're not looking at the archetypes that are connected to this, or we could say the archetypes or the star codons, as anything that is limiting us in any way. Instead, it's a portal to the next thing, to the next revelation. So it feels that this is a transmission of freedom and sovereignty, as opposed to a transmission that says, we are in a program and you just have to become aware of the program to suffer less, and there's no choice. So that's the difference. I do speak a little bit cynical way, which is exactly the same cynical way that Ra Hu was speaking in. But that's basically what he was saying. And he was not necessarily a spiritual being. He was speaking a lot about the mystical, but he didn't really have a spiritual way of seeing a meaning with it. And that's something that you were saying from the beginning, Rob, like the meaning of it is something that's so important. And it's really the golden thread through all of this. And we can feel that there is a meaning with this, behind this, that is weaving with this. And the more I'm tuning in with this, the more I can feel the meaning, the purpose in me of what can evolve, and what can transcend, and what can integrate.
Mm. That's so beautiful. Yeah, it's as you say, it's I feel like the Star Codons, and the reason why it was called Star Codons, essentially that was the name that came, right? Like the lost octave, just but it's the fact that although it's the genetic code, it's the stars are are in that genetic code. And so it's the stars and the genetic code merged, the heaven and the earth merged as one. That, like you said, but they're portals, they're doorways into exploring like above and below and within. And so it's yeah, it's just a beautiful harmony. So through this, essentially came this. And this is its sort of, you could say its bare bones, its essential components. And so in that same hypergeometry Venus star that I say it's the Venus transmission part 2 is the star codons. And essentially what's beautiful about it is it segments it into sort of understandable chunks and sort of themes. And that's what I really loved about this is like to know the genetic code like in its entirety can seem so daunting. And actually through the Venus transmission, it's like, well, there's this theme and this theme and this theme. So it's like you can start to understand how things are in constellations and how they're grouped, and then that makes it a lot easier to comprehend. So again, these titles for this were sort of this beautiful moment of in meditation for me. That was like, okay, what are these called? Like, what are they feeling? What do they feel like? How can I convey this to share? And that's when the colors came through. And as Bella highlighted, I was working on my own project, Soul Colors, and I'm a colorologist. So color to me is like a language. And so they say a picture says 1,000 words. So it's like just by looking at the colors and the geometry, you start to get a feel of what it's about. And then, of course, the words come in. And so the first sort of star codons groupings came through as independence. And what's funny is that, as we'll explore over the next 2 webinars, is that the star codon of Eve is in the constellation star codon of independence, because it's like it's the first creation, like, or you could say the first separation from divinity in a way. It's the first construction of humanity. So it's really interesting because we're right at that precipice of America, of that sort of Pluto of 250 years. And so that's the declaration of independence, right? So it's often seen as this great thing to be independent and to be sovereign. But then there's also that sense of independence is like the first separation, right? Or the first, um, yeah, the first sense of a human separation from divinity. And that's where it's that weaving of to understand Eve as the first creation, not as anything bad or separate from the divine, but it's the journey to discover that we are the divinities within. So that's what I mean. They've all got their own story. Convergence is this sense of bringing things together. So that's really interesting that the first one's about kind of splitting apart, like this sense of independence. The second one is about how things start to veer together again. And then the third one is actually providence. And of course, divine providence, right? That's kind of like the divine plan or the synchronicity or the star story that we play out. That's all kind of scripted in a way that's open. That's our lives. It's the sense that we have this natal chart, we have these influences, this imprinting, but actually we get to co-create with this. And that's divine providence. Once you contact inner realms, you can start to work with your natal chart, work with your DNA, and start to activate and start to use the epigenetics to move you into the different level of experiencing. And then, of course, then the fourth one is resurgence, right? That's essentially like the resurrection, like the sort of the birthing of yourself as that into that next octave, into that next frequency, into that next dimension, into the Aquarian age. And so you can kind of see this beautiful journey. And that's why I say there's this 40 days and 40 nights, because there's four of those and they're 10 weeks each that we go through. And then once we go through that, then we finally end up at Omnia, which is essentially where the lost octave is anchored. And Omnia is like, means all. It's omnipotence. It means like all powerful, and you have all knowing, and this all these om words. It's like the sound om. It's like it involves everything, and that's really where we take it into the next dimensions. Not just from the third dimension, but we actually go through into this, which is the fourth dimensional geometry. Then we go into the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, the eighth, and then literally only a week ago, I think I remember sending Bella the image. I was like, I finally figured out the ninth dimension of how our genetic code moves in the ninth dimension, and it's wild, right? This is wild, because I could take this to any geneticist and they would be looking at this and they would see that it's not just like a thing that's made up. This is scientifically mapped out. And to think that we are at this point in this transmission where it's revealing to us that we are multidimensional beings. Every drop of our DNA actually has a reverberation effect throughout all of these dimensions. So that's what links it into the subtle bodies, into the emotional, the astral, the mental planes, the causal, and beyond. So that we're not just looking at going through these codons of how is this affecting my human self in this 3D reality, but how is it actually starting to open doorways in your inner world, in your emotional body, how to heal the traumas or go through these passages in your mental planes and into your causal plane, which is that sort of sense of action and reactions, and how the universe is sort of birthed. So this is much, much deeper than just saying this is connected to this gate and this is connected to this star and this is the amino acid. Like, this is opening us up into understanding ourselves on a multidimensional level. And that is why I'm so excited to share about it. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to mention anything, Bella, how you felt about the difference in the star codons in the different geometries and colors.
I feel like I want to take it back a little bit so that you that are here also understand what we're looking at. The genetic code, we can say that is corresponding to the hexagrams, right? And when we are looking at this, we can basically see different groupings of the hexagrams. And they're going to be the same way that the gates live in different parts of the body graph. Like this on a multi-dimensional level, we're going to have the gates that are going to live in one of those worlds, the world of independence, the world of convergence, or the process of convergence, of providence, of resurgence. So we are starting to see a geometry where actually the hexagrams or the gates are starting to speak to each other and telling us a story of, for example, like what is independent. But then we have it through the star codons that are like pairings of gates. So it's a story on so many different levels and so many different dimensions. But just to kind of take it back, what are you looking at? We're basically looking at different groupings of the gates that correspond to the hexagrams, to our code. And we can look at it, like Rob is saying, in different dimensions. And of course, when I see them mapped in 3D, 4D, 5D, 6D, I don't necessarily logically understand it, but there is a fascination and there's a feeling of, yes, this is how it must be. Although that kind of thing would never come through me. However, like I say, to see that geometry and to also just feel the felt sense of it in different constellations or different geometries, depending on the dimension, is really, really powerful.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, it's so great as a reminder, because for me, it's like being transported through this like a quantum leap. And so the easiest way I can probably explain it is that if you think about every gate is a fractal. So, the 64 hexagrams and the plus the lost octave 72. So each individual gate is like independence, right? So it's like its own sovereign gate. And that's what we identify with in our natal chart. But then as you sort of move into sort of the next dimensions, they start to group together. And this is what is beautiful, Bella, as you say, is that every circle that you see here represents a gate. And so all of a sudden now you can see that there are groupings of 8 gates and grouping of 16 gates. And then you start to think, wow, so that means that that hexagram that you have, say like your sun sign or your Venus or your Mars, that's connected to 8 other gates. And so, and all of those are having an effect on that single fractal. And that's really what the whole point of the star codons is, to look at all of the fractals, every single gate, and then start to bring them and merge them as we go through the dimensions into oneness. And then you start to see that at a certain dimension, which is super cool, a certain dimension, the whole I Ching is one thing, right? So the whole DNA is one thing. And it makes sense. But it's so beautiful to see that we're so used to saying like, oh, there's this gate and this line. At a certain point, as you start to move through it, you start to see that that's harmonically connected to those, and then that's connected to those, and then it sort of like folds on itself, like a sort of, it's like pulling everything together, and that's the tree. That's where the mother tree is, like we're traveling the roots to go back to that new Lemuria, to the mother tree. And then that's really where the source code is. And then that's when we can expand into the next higher dimensions of all of this. And when I speak about dimensions, I mean, I love all of this because it's very Piscean, right? Like to be transcendental in that thought. And it took me quite a while to think about how does this relate to me, right? To say a 6 dimensional geometry and the gates and the kernels, how does it even matter to my life? But what through this, I've managed to take higher dimensions and make them understandable into everyday life. And there's some beautiful embodiment practices that we will speak about in the last webinar, which are so crucial to this. So to think like, oh, 6 dimension, what relevance is that to me? Actually, you'll be so surprised how important that is. And when you can activate that, how different you perceive things. And then you start to see that everything is so connected and you know it. It's not just sort of like conceptual or an intuition anymore. It's like, oh, I can actually see the pattern and how it works. And I can see that this gate is connected to these. And so you may find in your own natal chart that you may have the whole like codon, star codon of independence. And so that's going to be a theme in your life. So if you've got a majority of your gates all harmonically independence, and you're like, yeah, I like to be independent. And it's like, it's so amazing how it starts to mirror and give you sort of pathways into how to move forward, how to explore. And that's why I say it's just, it really is this sort of grand experiment that voyage that we're about to go on. So I think I've thrown a lot at you for sure. So I don't know if you want to, if you think it'd be a good time better for some questions. I know we're getting close to the hour. We will go into some of these star codons tomorrow. I'm actually going to read you, I'm actually going to reveal and read you the star codon of E, because she has her own star codon. And it's the magic of this. You really don't want to miss it because it's just, it shows a completely different story to what we've known in the codons and the DNA with the hexagrams so far. And so it's the place to, it's the place to start our journey. And I'm going to reveal that tomorrow. I'm actually going to read you snippets of it and show you what you're going to receive when you go through this. So yeah, I think we'll do that tomorrow. And if there's any questions now, then that'd be great to start to answer them.
I felt there was something I wanted to say before. Basically, what you were seeing in what we just looked at the screen, these are the 72 gates that you are seeing. What you were saying is actually all one, but it has these different facets. So that's why it doesn't really serve to just say, oh, I'm going to go and just dive into resurgence. And that's the little fractal that I want to dive into. It's really a journey of oneness. And I believe that when we are putting all these colors together, and even what you saw in the middle, which is the omnia, which is the lost octave, which is the 8 extra gates that make it harmonic for real. That's why I feel that it's so important that we are able to see the different perspectives, and that it's not like, of course, everything is hologenetic, so you can take out one thing and get it. But also, what I am excited about is the journey. I always want to do the whole thing. I'm Taurus, so it might take me some time to do things, but when I go, I really want to go. And for me, this is the code that the more you're able to go through it, and also at the end, when you get the extra gates in the higher octave or the lost octave, that's also when so much fall into place. And then it's when you realize more of the unity than the nuances and the uniqueness of each facet of gates or star codons. So just a little bit of kind of geometry from a simplifying sense.
So perfect. And that's why it became, although I could section it into those parts, those 5 parts, when I was sort of discussing with you, but I was like, can we do it in the fractals? Like it was, but because everything's interlinked, like it's so hard to separate something that's one, right? So, and because otherwise you sort of miss out the fact that if you did say the independence and didn't do any others, you'd miss the beauty of how it connects to the other gates in ways in which have never been explored before. So it's impossible to, you're only going to get a part of the equation. And that's why this sense of this course is going to be a whole year's course. It's going to be 52 weeks. And it's kind of like a response also to the feedback that I got when I asked people about like, what do you actually want to do? How do you want to explore like the lost octave? And so many people said, oh, a mystery school, or like to do things that take longer because there's so much in each one. Like we're going to find it really hard to fit everything into a whole year. Like honestly, if we were to really take our time with this, like this could be 2 years worth. So it's like a quantum amount in this sort of short time, really. And in 1 year's time, to think that you would know the DNA, you would know all about I Ching, you'd know every gate, you'd know multi dimensions to it all, and all of the music. It's like what you can learn in a year, and that's why I say that the Lost Octave is kind of that testament. Because I never wrote a book before, I never did anything like that before, and in 9 months, that magic happened. And then now there's this, the Star Codons have come, so it can be so surprising how much you can do and learn and know and actually start to really use this in your life in that short period of time. And in 1 year's time, yeah, you could probably know this so beautifully well. It's going to be really transformative. So yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions if you can see any in there,
Yeah,
Bella.
yeah. It is so vast, and at the same time, you're going to realize what we spoke about in the beginning, that it's so essential. And that's where I went with it when you were giving it to me. I went to feel the essence of it. And then it's like a flower or a bud that's opening and opening. So I do feel that also the way that we have planned it out, that it's possible to do it in an essential way. And it's not necessarily going to be overwhelming. But that's also why we want us to be in a temple or in a mystery container, so that we are able to, like, as we're popping, as the different buds are opening, that we're able to be there for each other, because we know that this works on a cellular level, and cellular level is including the physical. And this is something that both Robert and I have felt through the bones to the physical. It goes there. So for me, it is important to have a community where we are supporting each other, and where we also have that possibility to share and to be connected. Because one thing is to receive the transmission, but then what do we do with it? And that's the feminine way of connecting, where I feel it's so important, and what I've been doing on my path with Unlocker Design. So that's the aspect of it where we make it ours, each one of us in a unique way. And some of you are going to go into the intricacies of the genetic code and all the decimals and all the details. And some of you, maybe more like me, I have one first line in my whole design. Maybe I'm just more bringing it in through a cellular intent and breadth of what the essence of it is. So there is no right or wrong way, but I do feel that doing it together is such a strong path. It's an experiment in one way. And on the other hand, I have no hesitation whatsoever. That's an amazing journey. And I see quite a lot of clarity what it is about already.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. Yeah, and as I say, tomorrow we'll get an opportunity to give you a sample of what it would be like when we do the weekly calls. And so over the year, it will be like every single week that will take one of part of the transmission and then one of the star codons. And so tomorrow we'll give you an example of when I read part of the star codon, you can kind of receive, like but I said, you can kind of take it in that way of just feeling the words and seeing how that feels in your body as well as all the technical stuff. So
So let's start with the first question. What is your take on using tropical versus sidereal, true sky as observed by, for example, stargazing apps?
yeah, well, great question. I love it. I was hoping to sort of address this more as well because in a way, it doesn't matter what system that you use. Like, I know that some sort of diehard fans of human design are like, well, it was based on tropical and that's how it should be. And there's some negatives with sidereal. And of course, there's so many different calculations you can use when you really go into that. So there's three types of astrology, you could say. So you have the tropical, which is like your 12 signs equally segmented, the sidereal, which is the same, but then adjusted to sort of how the precession of the equinox is gone. And then you've got constellational, which is different sizes of the zodiac signs. And it's funny because I think in constellational, I think Scorpio is gate 44, or hexagon 44 only, or it might even be maybe the first gate, but you know, and so in a way it doesn't even matter. This is beyond sort of like it doesn't necessarily matter what system you use, like because we're covering every single gate, every single codon, like whatever system you use, it works. And so, of course, like it may paint sort of a slightly different story. But in this, I actually speak about the 13, including the 13th zodiac, because harmonically, 13 works perfectly with the star codons, which I'll get into more over the next 2 days. So I'm all up for any system that you feel resonates. I mean, for me, I tend to use something like sidereal or true sky or constellational astrology for things like to look at like my different north node, for example. And that just gives you like a different insight into things. And so, for example, my sun sign, it changes me from Pisces right on the cusp of Pisces Aquarius. So when I use sidereal, which I think is perfect, right? Because all of this is about moving from Pisces to Aquarius. So it kind of makes sense. So yeah, I would say you can use it whatever system you wish, however you wish. It's when you know the whole, then you can chop it up and carve it however you wish to and assign whatever signs, however, whatever degrees you wish. It doesn't really matter. It's one pie. And so there's great versatility in it. Yeah, I encourage people to use whatever they resonate with and it works for everything.
The next question that is around the first Eve and this being the first woman. So she says, my question may just be related to semantics. I remember learning that the first woman was Lilith. However, I don't think that this would be significant as I sense we're talking about the first woman in general. I welcome your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I love it. I explored it as well, but it was like, it was interesting because the transmission comes how it comes. And so for me, it was first Eve. And of course, like in science, they actually have the term mitochondrial Eve. So that's what science regards as the birth of humanity. So for me, it was all about Eve. And of course, Eve is like, it's a sort of an archetype, it's a metaphor, it's an allegory, it's just essentially the first mother of all creation. So yeah, I mean, I know there's lots of different biblical narratives and different Gnostic texts that say about Lilith and it's not trying to cut any of that out. Like if anything, I'm fully welcome. But the one thing I would say about Eve is in the Star Codons, it's a completely different story to what you would expect Eve to be in the Bible. Like she is wild. Like she's not like, and the Star Codons, they're different to the Lost Doctrine because they're quite raw. And like Bella said, the, the transmissions, they're shorter, they're to the point, and they tackle things that are like they tackle taboos, they tackle the difficult things. They don't the maternal DNA doesn't shy away from the travesties and the difficultness of life, the challenges. But you're being held and guided by the mother, by first Eve through this, by the Venusian love. And that's what allows us to tackle these difficult things within us and things that we've experienced. So it's not shy. And first Eve, it's when I read you this tomorrow, you'll hear it and you'll be like, yeah, she is a rogue. Like she's there to, in a way, how can I put it? She's there to upset the balance to create balance, right? So the the architecture of say Saturn, like that, the geometries and the matter and everything else, like that's like your structure. You need that. You need that in order to create creation. But Eve is there to be like the defiant one, right? She's the one that, bends the rules. She's the one that is the anomaly. And so that's what allows creation to evolve without the DNA going off track and mutating, then we would die off. So Eve is the one that is the forever vine that's always moving, that's always guiding the process. It's Gaia's vine within us that's creating the mutations, that's evolving us with our surroundings, with the planetary movements. And that's why we know how much the moon affects us, like the waters. And so this is like that sense of Eve is like the vine that weaves through us as a humanity, as a collective, in order for us to move into that next evolution of humanity. So she's fun.
Yeah, she's unapologetic. And I remember reading about her and then some of the placements in my chart that are connected to Capricorn. And I got a whole new feeling of what those placements are. And it felt so more true to me than what I have learned through astrology or through human design. So I think for many of you tomorrow, it's going to feel very true. The last question, I've answered that. So you're asking which gates are involved in the star codons. So what I was wanting to have you understand on that slide that we had, where you had 4 different colored ones and then a white one in the middle, that is all the gates. So you have 16, 16, 16, 16, and then the lost octave 8 in the middle. So we have the whole genetic code plus the revelation for those of you that have the book of the lost octave, which is the omnia in the middle. That's also why somebody like me can relate so easily, because I've been living those, I call them archetypes, because I feel like they are archetypes in our DNA, in our world, like whatever level you're looking at, physical, genetic, or in the society, or even in the stars, I feel like they are archetypes that exist on different levels. So it's all of it. And that's why this is the complete code. And also what we were saying before, why we didn't feel that cutting it in parts really made sense, because why would we give you a snippet of the DNA? Do you remember, I don't know how many years ago, 15 years ago, before they had mapped the whole DNA? And then those of us that are bored, I was born in the 80s, like when they said, now we mapped the whole genome. And that was really cool. Like then you had the whole code suddenly. So I think this is kind of similar. It makes sense to, if we have the whole code, it makes sense to look at it.
Yeah, no, perfect.
And then we have one more question here. I'm very interested in transforming business/work/organizational culture. Do you have any thoughts about how the star codons could help to do this?
Well, as I said before, my opening statement was the genetic answers of our universe. Like, imagine the quantum computer that far exceeds AI. Like, that's in us. That is the star codons. It's you go into meditation, or you sit there and breathe, or you contemplate, or you think about these and allow these star codons to move in your life, and then the answers are there. That's why I say, like, I never set out on this mission to say, right, I want to figure out the star codons. It just came and I followed that track. And then I remember when I shared to Bella the first time, she was like, this is like a whole universe. That was when you said that to me, like, this is like a whole new universe. And I thought, again, oh, this is, hey, it's only a few things. And then once I just went down that path, like all these doors opened, all these routes just expanded out into the holographic universe in multiple dimensions. I was like, whoa. Yeah, like of course it's how it's going to connect to business. How does it connect to culture? How does it connect to, this is like if you want to understand like the collective consciousness of like humanity, because of Eve at the beginning, it's like because we're going straight to the source, straight to the source code of it. What was the first intention of humanity being created anyway? It's like it's all there in the DNA. And so but I said by covering every gate, by covering every code, by covering all of the DNA, you'll know everything. And from that, that's when you can consult the Star Codons for your questions and and receive your own answers. Obviously, like just because I've written about it doesn't mean that's the only perspective. Like the whole idea is that I can sort of show you the way that I've found. Like, look through this door. This is what I found. Then you walk through that door and have your own experience. There's nobody can tell you what you're going to experience, and so I just know what I feel the universal transmission was for it, and then I have my own journey inside that sort of written program. So again, it's sort of impersonal. It's not like it's like my view on it. It's essentially like a universal view. And that's why I'm excited to journey with everyone through this, to have my sort of personal experience through it also.
Yeah, I love that answer. And it's almost like a lens or glasses that you can put on and then you can look at things from that. I also feel that we're going to have the possibility to explore that a little bit with this, but then we're going to speak about that the third day too, for people that really want to take this out into their work, whether that is in organizations or more like one-to-one work as a coach or in courses, that we also have thought about how to work with that together. Because one thing is to learn it for your own integration, your own transformation, your own resurgence, and all these things. And then there's also many of us that are here. There are astrologers or there are people that could bring parts of this into the world. And that's actually what I'm most excited about. And that's sometimes where I've felt a little bit held back by the regulations of the other systems that I've been in, because you have to respect where it comes from. And then there can be all these kind of different things. So at least from what I've heard from you, Rob, as well, this is something that we want to have go out into the world, and we want you to go out in organizations or wherever, like Julia is saying, wherever you want to take it, and then experiment and then come back and tell Rob, because I'm sure that there's so much to learn and so much to see and so much to unlock. And again, I go back to what I said before. It is actually quite tangible. Like some of the names of the star codons are so on point. They are not like super spiritual concepts. They are like very, again, tangible, down to the point, and actually very much easy to just like, they are connected to the everyday life. They are not somewhere else. They can take you to places, but they also have really a place in our everyday, in our interrelational, in our relation with ourselves. You're gonna see. Today is just the beginning, and I understand that many of you feel like we're speaking about so many things already. It's gonna be hopefully even clearer in the next few days. And then, of course, to get the whole thing, you're gonna have to come in. But whatever today is still a question mark. You still have like a minute if you want to ask a question. Bring your questions to tomorrow as well, if there are things that are popping up. And then at the end of tomorrow, similar, you're going to be able to even ask things from today if you weren't able to really formulate it or digest it.
Yeah, no, that's so beautifully said, and that's why I say, like, for me, this is a real unique opportunity because I think this is so great. That's why it's so great to have Bella on board and doing this with her, because there's that the masculine and feminine perspective in all of this. And of course, with the support group that we're going to run and things that we get to share in this. And there is plenty of time, a whole year. There's a plenty of time for us to really get to know you, get to know each other, and to really make sure that you understand this on not just conceptually, but the embodiment practices we will share in the last webinar. Like we really want you to know this, to grasp this, and so that you've got the different perspectives of Bella's so good about how to bring this into your day to day life. And then with me, it's like the technical questions of how these things merge and wiggle together and fit. So I feel like it's such a great opportunity. We all get to do this, and yeah, in a way, I think everything that you're gonna want to know, you'll know, and you'll really grasp it. So that's why I often say, like, if you've never even done any of this before, and it's the first time of you've just seen the star codons, what is this? had a couple of people message me saying, I only just found your book like like yesterday, that I have no idea what it's about, but I feel like the call to it. Like in a way, that's so great because we are literally going to start from the first Star Codon and work through every single week, go through every codon and all the geometries, transmissions, how to feel this, use this in your week. And so by the time you've done the year, you've not only just learnt it, but you've actually worked with it to the point that you're embodying transmission and then you're exploring deeper yourself into this. And so, yeah, we've got a couple of extra surprises that we'll share about in tomorrow and Friday. But yeah, I think we've done pretty good today getting through all of this. And I know it's gone on a little bit longer, but it's great to answer the questions.
I have a question for you, Rob. Do you want me to put the website in the chat so people can start to look? Do you want me to just show them like a minute what they are looking at, or just put the link?
Yeah, no, yeah, go for it.
Okay, I'm going to share the screen.
Yeah, the website's up and live, and you can just do thelostoctave.com/star codons. And then you can start to read through it, look through it in your own time between now and tomorrow. And yeah, I'll leave it for, let's take it over a minute.
So some of the things that we told you about today is going to be more clear, like the 72 gates. Yes, it's the 64 plus the 8. So here you're going to be able to click and read more about it. And then a little bit more of what's in each one of them as well. So you have this. And then we do have a special pricing until the end of the week. So this is the early bird pricing. You can do 12 payments. So then it becomes a monthly commitment. So this is what we are going to have for the rest of the week. And then I think it goes up like $400, right? So if you feel before the end of the week that this is something for you, then you can jump in. But this website will also give you way more. If you continue to go all the way down, you're going to see so many things. Don't get overwhelmed, but here you have a lot of it. So it's a little bit more clear for you if you use this, and you can have fun with that until tomorrow if you want to. And there are some questions and answers at the end as well.
Yeah, no, so great. And I put in about the payment plans in there because I know with the current way things are, it can be difficult for people. And so many people message me say, I really want to do this. And before I even spoke about it. And so I've put it in there so that over that year that it becomes affordable, more like a monthly payment for the year. And like I said, the fact is it's everything that you're going to need to know. There's not one thing that's like left out or one thing that's like, oh, is not covered. Every single thing in there. And it's interesting because it's the entire system. So it's sort of, again, it's not a fractal. It's talking about all the fractals, but it's the entire thing. So it's the whole entire wheel. It's the entire year, the entire DNA. So like I said, but like Bella said, go through it, start having a little look through it and read through everything. But just know that it's done also in these bite-sized chunks. Like I said, every single week we'll be gathering, connecting and sharing. And so, yeah, it's advanced in a way, but it's also, and that's the beauty of it as well, right? Because that's the next octave of it, right? It is advanced, but at the same time, we're taking it bite size, and there's both of us here with you. And that's why I say I'm looking forward to seeing each person's insight and their experience every week. We get to explore something new. So it's like for the whole next year, every single week, there's something new connections, new understandings. And so that's why I think it's really exciting that it's kind of like a mystery school. It's like an intense year of going through something and knowing at the end of it that you will know this so beautifully well, and you'll see that what I've experienced so far, that beautiful harmonic of how everything weaves together. It's just so magical, and that's why I say I'm just so excited to begin and start. And so yeah.
So tomorrow we're going to more zooming in. So give you actually a little bit more like what it's going to be like when we go into one codon, for example. And then, like Rob said, the third day is going to be about embodiment practices. And these are actually quite real. They are not just like a little asana or a little mudra. They are actually really cool. So quite different ways of tuning into transmission today, tomorrow, and Friday. So if you can, please come. And if you can't come, please make sure that you watch the replays quite fast, both if you want to opt in, but also because we don't know if we're going to leave the replays forever. So just so that you are up to date with things. But thank you, Rob.
It's so good. And yeah, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Thank you for everybody for being here. And yeah, same time tomorrow. And we get to dive into Star Codon of Eve and some of the gates and how they're all connected. So yeah, be here tomorrow and it's going to be exciting. Yeah. Thank you, Bella.
Bye.
Bye.